Hey folks, Kristen here. Today I wanted to upload a video about introductions. So hopefully this helps you kind of figure out what your introduction is meant to do, the function of it, that sort of thing. Basically, it's just there to get your reader's attention and introduce them to the material that you're working with. That's the big thing to remember. So what types of things should you include in your introduction? Well, you have to ask yourself the question, what should your reader know before you start explaining what your position is on the topic, right? This thing that you're writing about. How should you explain it? Well, do you need to provide the reader with context? If you're talking about your favorite hobby or favorite restaurant, do you want to maybe explain what that hobby is, what it means to you? If you're, with the restaurant, do you need to tell them what the restaurant is, what kind of food they serve? If you're talking about, whether the internet connects or divides, what part of the internet are you going to be discussing, right? What type of context does the reader need to know in order to succeed in reading your paper? You also want to say, okay, well, how do I want to do this? Do I want to give them a little bit of a story? Is it something that I want them to be able to connect to personally? Is it something that they need to, know, kind of like my feelings about it, obviously without saying me, because we have to stick to third person. But do I want to tell a story? Do I want them to be in my shoes as I'm relating to this topic? Do we want to start with a question? My go-to answer for should we start an essay with a question is no. And let me just explain that really quickly. You don't want to start your introduction with a question or include a question in your essay in general, just for the simple fact of um, your reader may misinterpret and may think of something different than what you expect them to say. If you ask them a question and they go in a completely different direction than you're planning to go in, that may confuse them. So you want to make sure that your reader is on the same page as you. You want to make sure that there's no question that you are kind of walking the reader along in your thoughts regarding whatever it is you're writing about. And this is in any essay. This isn't just in the illustration example essay, any essay at all. So avoid asking them questions because you can't control the reader. What you can do is control what you're writing. So instead of asking a question, if you're feeling tempted to do that, answer the question. Okay, that's my best advice to you regarding questions. Answer it, don't ask it. Okay, your reader will thank you for that. So those types of things you want to include in your intro. Information that the reader needs to know in order to be able to read your essay. Maybe a story if it's something that you want them to connect to personally, and avoid questions. Those are the big things. So there are some elements of an introduction: a hook, a bridge, and a thesis. Okay, the hook is essentially the first sentence or two sentences of your introduction, and it's what gets your reader interested. It's giving them the most interesting thing about your topic in general, that you can, to make them want to read further. I'm going to be real with you. No one wants to read an essay. Okay, that's just the way you need to think about it going in. No one wants to read an essay, just like no one wants to read in an instruction manual. No one wants to read. It's 2020. No one wants to read anything longer than 120 characters or 140 characters, whatever it is that Twitter maxes out at. So what we need to do is right away get the reader thinking, get them questioning, get them ready to go. And you do that by providing some interesting information in the hook, something that surprises them, something that gets them agitated, something that makes them feel some sort of emotion. And then we have the bridge, which connects the hook to the thesis statement. That's where your context will come in. That's where any information your reader needs to know should go. And then your thesis statement, which we talked about in class, right? Your thesis statement should be information regarding exactly what your essay is going to talk about, right? It's that statement of purpose plus the forecast element, okay, or forecast elements that you're going to discuss. So your topic and your position on the topic, connect it with the word because, and then the elements that you're going to focus on in your essay, right? What each paragraph is going to say. You want to make it so that you kind of provide an organizational map for your reader. That's the big thing. Now, in the bridge, you want to follow something that's called the funnel method, because the funnel method makes it so that everything in the introduction is connected together. And that's an important tip for writing essays in general. Everything needs to be written in such a way that your reader understands the purpose of what it is before they move on to the next thing, right? So they need to understand the purpose of it being in your essay. If they can't figure out why it's there, it's not going to be effective. So make sure your reader understands that. So how does that funnel method work? Well, let's take a look at this example. Right, the economic recession of 2007 has been one of the most severe downturns in America's economic history since the Great Depression. That's kind of shocking, right? That's the hook. That's something to engage the reader. You hear about the Great Depression in history class, you think, wow, that was bad. It makes you think of like the Dust Bowl, the stock market crash, all this stuff. And then we have this recent event that's being compared to one of the most damaging economic situations that we've had in United States history, right? So it kind of makes this situation more severe. And then we see virtually no American citizen has been exempt from feeling the effects of the recession. All around the nation, people are taking drastic and necessary steps to confront this new economic landscape. Citizens are making several changes to the way they live their everyday lives, and most importantly, how they spend their money. Ordinary American citizens are coping with the economic recession by eliminating the purchases of non essential products, expanding their educations, and finding additional ways to supplement their primary incomes. Right? Notice I put up my fingers as I read that last part. Purchases of non essential products, expanding their educations, finding additional ways to supplement their primary incomes. This essay is going to talk about each of these things, one in each body paragraph. Okay, that's the thesis statement. The topic and position on the topic would be that ordinary American citizens are coping with the economic recession. Okay, that's what this essay is going to be talking about in general. And we can see that the information in the hook and the information in the thesis statement is connected by those steps in the bridge. So let's sort of develop that a little bit further. Okay, I've made it a little bit bigger here in case you were having a hard time seeing. But let's move one step beyond this, and we can see that we've got a couple of different things happening. I've circled in brown each of the things that relate to the overall topic, right? We see in the hook economic recession. The next sentence, it's talking about the recession. It's equating those two words so the reader knows, okay, if they talk about the economic recession in this essay, it's this thing, but they can also call it the recession. It also relates to money, as you can see by the fourth circle in brown. So we know that all of these ideas are connected. We can also see that idea of American citizens being carried through this introduction as well, because that's who the economic recession has impacted. So we see American citizen, we see people, citizens, and ordinary American citizens, right? But now keep in mind that even though this language has been, when we point it out like this, a little bit repetitive, it didn't feel repetitive as we were reading it. And the reason for that is that these sentences are written in such a way that there's tiny tweaks, right? We don't call them American citizens 4 times in a row. We call them American citizens, then people, then citizens, then ordinary American citizens, right? Same thing for the economic recession. So we want to keep in mind that how we write things will make our writing more dynamic. Make sure that you're varying your language. Make sure that the information that you're presenting is a little bit different. Now, this connects to the funnel method because you want to make sure that each of your elements in your introduction are related to one another, right? Like I was saying before. So by carrying through these two separate ideas, the writer of this introduction has made you realize, okay, so we're going to be talking about the economic recession all the way through. We're going to be talking about its impact on American people all the way through, right? And the introduction gives you the space to establish trust with the reader, okay? Trust with your reader is one of the most important things that you can get or lose. If you are going off topic in your essay or things just aren't making sense, you begin to like chip away at that trust. You don't want to do that, okay? So keep that trust intact. Keep reminding them what you're writing about. Keep reminding them what they're reading about. Do it in a way that makes them feel like they're not hearing the same information again and again and again. Okay, so this is back to the original text. Now, this slide is asking how the introduction is narrowed. Okay, well, what does that mean? How is this getting more specific? If you want to pause this here and see, if you can figure out how things are becoming more specific, go for it. But if you're feeling like you'd like to just scroll on through, I'm going to jump to the next slide. So this is getting narrowed by, starts off by talking about the economic recession more generally, okay, right? The overall topic. And then we narrow to American citizens, right? So our reader sees, okay, so we're talking about the economic recession, and now we're talking about its impact on American citizens. And then we narrow in the next sentence further to talking about the drastic and necessary steps that these American citizens are taking in order to cope with the economic recession. Now, we can ask ourselves, okay, well, what are these drastic and necessary steps? Well, boom, several changes to the way they live their lives and how they spend their money are what those drastic and necessary steps are. They're making changes, changing things up so that they can do what they need to do in order to survive in this economic landscape in the economic recession of 2007. Right, so you can see how each of these things are connected. It's almost as if you ask the introduction questions as you go. The economic recession of 2007. Okay, who's this recession impacting? Well, American citizens. And how is it impacting American citizens? Well, it's making them take drastic and necessary steps. What kind of steps? Well, they have to make changes regarding what? How they spend their money, right? So each of these different sentences is contributing to what the reader needs to know in order to continue, right? And then you have, okay, well, then what are these changes to the ways they spend their money, right? And I haven't circled them in the thesis statement, but know that that is the forecast elements, right? It sets the reader up for the thesis, and then the thesis says, okay, this is the most specific thing that I'm going to say in this introduction, because the several changes to how they spend their money is by eliminating the purchases of non-essential products. It's by expanding their educations, and it's by finding additional ways to supplement their primary incomes. So you want to think about it in those terms, right? Think of writing introductions, just like writing essays, if you're more of an analytical person, as a formula, okay? Each sentence takes a step, and you want to just make sure that you identify what those connecting elements are, and then figure out how to write a sentence that discusses them and leads into the next thing. Okay, that's essentially the funnel method. So the moral of this PowerPoint presentation is that your introduction should transition between ideas clearly and efficiently. Use that by having keywords and key phrases that link together, right? That idea of economic recession, economic landscape, recession, and and money, right? That thread carries through. Think about it in terms of American citizens, people, ordinary American citizens, right? Like that. And then remember that your introduction should narrow from your hook to your thesis statement, right? The hook is that thing that gets your reader interested. Your bridge takes the opportunity to provide context, but also narrow things down until your reader is ready to understand what's happening in your thesis. Okay, those are the big things that you should walk away from this video understanding. Okay, so thank you for watching my video about introductions. If you have any questions, please contact me. You know how to do that. And I will see you in the next video.